My name is Ashton, and with me is my coworker Calvin, and we are from the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. Now today, you guys are in for a special treat because the animals that we are going to share with you all today are special animals that you don't usually get to see when you're at the zoo. They are animals that live right behind the scenes at the zoo. So the reason that our animals aren't necessarily on exhibit at the zoo is because our whole day usually consists of doing things like this. So we go out and we travel with our animals to various areas in our community and all over Ohio, but also all over the United States too. So these animals have traveled all the way down to Florida, all the way out to the West Coast as well to help educate people about animals and share them with our communities. So these animals are unique. So that's why you don't see them on exhibit at the zoo, is because it would be the lamest exhibit at the zoo because it would be empty the whole day. Because once we get up in the morning and we go take care of the animals, we hit the road and we are out sharing these animals with the public. Now today we're going to be able to share some of these unique animal ambassadors with you guys. So what I'm going to do today is that I'm going to be telling you guys about these animals, some of my favorite facts about them, what makes them unique, while my coworker Calvin is going to walk around to make sure all of you guys get a good close look at these animals. So the path that he's going to take is he's going to walk around up front up here, and then he's going to do a circle around into the back. So you cars in the back that are sticking around, Calvin's going to walk out in front of you guys back there, so he'll do about a loop or a circle. And we're going to do our best to make sure all you guys get a close look at these animals. But if you want to get a closer look, feel free to join this crowd that's up here in the front, because once we've completed the loop, the animals will hang out up here as well. So we're going to do our best job to make sure you guys all get a good look at these animals today and get yourselves an up-close look at them. But we can go ahead out and bring out our first animal for you guys. This first animal is a very special kind of bird. This is a penguin. Now, people, you can usually tell this is a penguin because she is constantly wearing a tuxedo. So that's a very penguin thing. We always know this is a penguin because penguins have that really unique tuxedo pattern on her. But this is goldfish.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, he's like, hey, what is this?
Honestly, I'm trying to think of the animals we have. I don't think anything will be bothered by it.
I mean, they're indestructible, so it's fine. Thanks, man. No problem.
We usually think of penguins being found in the Arctic and usually slipping on ice or sledding on snow. But this penguin right here, if it gets below 45 degrees, she does not want to go outside. She hates cold weather, which is very weird for penguins. She prefers it to be about 80 degrees sunny. So she's very picky about her temperature, but she likes it to be warm because where she's found in South Africa, she's used to these warmer temperatures. Now, Goldie here, as a penguin, these guys are unique. If you guys look at your thumbs, when you guys look at your thumbs, give me a little thumbs up here. All right, guys, on your thumbs up, check out the tip of your thumb to that first crease where your thumb bends. So that area, that's about a square inch for measurement. If we were to put that on goldfish's back right here, we would cover 75 feathers in that one small area. So she has 75 feathers per square inch. So that's hundreds to thousands of feathers across her whole body. So she's actually incredibly soft. And it's kind of weird because if you're an animal that lives in warm weather, you wouldn't think that they'd want to have a ton of feathers on them or a ton of fur on them. You think they'd get really hot. But Goldie here, when she's on land, she doesn't really have to worry about getting too warm. Instead, all those feathers work like a wetsuit for her when she's in the water, because these guys are amazing swimmers. When she is in the water, she's super awkward on land. She waddles around, doesn't seem to walk around really well. But the second you put this bird in water, she goes upwards of speeds of 25 miles per hour. She is incredibly quick through the water. She's incredibly powerful. So even though penguins cannot fly, she does not have any flight ability like macaws do or other birds, she is able to fly through the water, is how I like to describe it. So she's really well adapted to being a fantastic swimmer as she goes around. All right, guys, if you check out those thumbs again for me, do you guys see all the little lines on your thumb? Everybody in the world has a unique pattern of lines across your fingers. It's a fingerprint, and it's something that makes all of us unique from one another. Goldie the penguin, she doesn't have thumbs, but what she does have is on her belly, she actually has little black freckles across her belly. And those little freckles that she has across her belly is unique to every penguin in the world. So that is one way we can tell our penguins apart. Because at the zoo, we work with 16 of these guys. 16 penguins is 16 tuxedos running all over the room at the same time. So having little 16 tuxedos, it can get a little confusing telling them all apart from each other. So we look at their bellies to tell them apart as a unique way to see which penguin is which. But another thing that we do is, if you notice, she's actually wearing a bracelet on her flipper. That's her little personalized name tag. So every penguin that we have in our department has a special name tag, and they're also all named after fish. So this is goldfish with us today, but we also have trouts and anchovy and halibut and all these other penguins named after fish. In our department, we like to be ironic where we can be. So naming penguins after fish, which penguins love to eat fish, is one way we could think we can be a little fun with our naming. But now you guys have a better look of those freckles on her belly. So in South Africa, where these penguins are from, this is actually a very endangered species of penguin. So that means that these guys are at threat of no longer being in the wild. So at the zoo, what we do is we support an organization called SANCOB. And these guys are basically on-ground vet staff that helps take care of the penguins in South Africa, because they all live in this one small area, and there's hundreds of them, thousands of them, but they all live in that same local area together. So having on-ground vet staff and researchers helps if there's an oil spill or if there's a disease or something happens around that colony, so they are right there to provide help and aid and get those penguins back up to speed. But if you're working with tons and tons of penguins, it is incredibly hard to tell them all apart from each other. So that's where those patterns on their belly come in handy. So what they used to do is they used to have blank penguin drawings, and they would draw in the freckles to identify their penguins. But now they'll walk up to them and take a picture with their phone camera and scan them like little penguin barcodes. And they use that to then identify all of them when they're studying these penguins on the coast. Because if you guys think about your days, we have structured days. We get up in the morning, we have breakfast, maybe we go to school, maybe we go meet up with friends, we have lunch. We kind of follow a structured day and make plans. So when we're talking about wild animals, one of the most important things we do for wild species is we figure out how they spend their days. So we find out, what do they eat for breakfast? Where do they like to go afterwards? And all this other information that enables us then to better protect these animals, to make sure we know what resources they need. But Goldie, as a penguin, she loves to eat fish. So these guys are out in the waters in South Africa catching anchovies and a lot of other small species of fish. So when you're a hunter, you have to have an advantage on prey species. So for her, she's hidden, which, when you look at Goldie, it seems like she has the worst camouflage in the world, because everybody knew that this was a penguin when she first walked out. We know this is a penguin because of that tuxedo color. But she's fine being noticed when she's on land. But the second you put goldfish in the water here, it is hard to see her. That dark back that she has, if you look down into the water, if you're swimming beneath Goldie and looking down, it's going to blend into the darkness of the water. But if you're beneath Goldie and looking up at the water's surface, the sun or the moon shining in off the surface is going to blend into that light belly that she has. So it's called counter shading, and it's how marine animals blend into water. So like killer whales or orcas have the same color pattern. So it's all have a dark back and a light belly, so they play with lighting when they're hiding in the water, because all of her prey that she wants to eat is in the water, so that's where she has to stay hidden. So these guys are pretty smart in their camouflage, because she knows where she'll need to use it the most. But we'll go ahead and say goodbye to Miss Goldfish here. Now these guys, they're incredibly charismatic birds. Of all the animals I work with in my department, I call penguins the most dramatic. Penguins, working with them every day, I say, is like a soap opera. Penguins have very, very big personalities. So everybody in my department, if you see us do zoo programs around the community, you'll always see a different penguin, because it depends on who's handling the penguin. So our penguins at the zoo pick their favorite keepers. And once a penguin has picked you as their favorite keeper, they're very protective over you. And they don't like other penguins interacting with you because you're their person. So penguins get very picky. And because of that, we have great relationship with our penguins, but our penguins will be very protective over their favorite people. All right, guys, we have our next animal for you guys. All right, good job, you guys up here. You guys know what kind of animal this is. This is Lucky, and she is something called a leopard tortoise. Now, the major question is, what's the difference between a turtle and a tortoise? Now, the main thing that I like to say is that tortoises usually look like rocks. They have a really big shell on their back. It kind of resembles a boulder. But the major difference you're going to find between turtles and tortoises is turtles love water. Tortoises don't like water. So turtles can swim really well. You can see, like, if you guys think about, like, sea turtles, fantastic swimmers. They've got thinner shells. They're built for swimming. They have webbed feet. Lucky, if we put her in the water, she would sink like a rock. So tortoises cannot swim that like a turtle can. And that's the main way we could tell our difference between the two species. So Lucky here, the African leopard tortoise, she is about as big as she's going to get. But what's cool about tortoises is that if you look at her shell, if you look really closely at her shell, you're going to notice that there's ridges across her shell. And when those ridges are across her shell, it's actually a way we can tell how old she is. So Lucky will actually, every year, she will add a ridge to her shell. So it's kind of like if a tree is chopped down and you can count the rings on a tree and see how old that tree is. Lucky, the tortoise, you can count those ridges across her back and then see also how old this tortoise would be. So Lucky here actually gets her name for a very particular reason. Lucky the tortoise, she is called Lucky because, as her name suggests, she's a very, very lucky tortoise. She was actually found crossing a major highway here in Ohio. And one of our board members at the zoo was driving to work one day, and they saw this boulder in the middle of the road, and they're like, that's weird. So they get out of their car to move it, but then it grows legs and walks away from them. And they're like, oh, that's a creature. So they find that it's a giant tortoise that was wandering through the highway. And we're like, this is not a native species. How did it get here? So we brought it to the zoo. She got some health care, and she got back up to speed because it was also late fall that we found her. And for Lucky, she would not have been able to get through the winter because she's adapted for really warm weather. So she had a really hard time in Ohio winter. So we found her just in time, and we got her to the zoo, and we sent out flyers asking if this was someone's lost pet, if somebody was looking for her, but we never heard anything. So Lucky turned into an ambassador in our department, and we estimate that she's about 60 years old. So we actually someone had the tedious task of counting every ridge that's across her shell to get that idea. I don't know who had that unfortunate task, but because of that, we estimate that she is about 60 years old. So it's also important because with Lucky, we do assume that she was someone's pet that had escaped or somebody had let go. Because tortoises, they are a very long commitment of a pet. 60 years old is a very old pet, and she's still going to get older. These guys can get anywhere to 80 to 90 years old when they're at the end of their life. So that is a very long commitment for a pet. So unfortunately, people can get tortoises and not realize that they live so long. So we think that Lucky was in that case, and they had let her go. And then we were able to find her and get her help. But it provides us a nice talking point that it's always important if you're getting a pet to always do research, especially how old that pet can get, because parrots and tortoises and reptiles can live for a really long time. But Lucky, she now lives with us at the zoo, and she helps us share this message about responsible pet ownership. So it's really important that she has this role now, and Lucky lives a very, very nice life here at the zoo. She's a little spoiled now. Now in the morning, one of my favorite stories about Lucky is that tortoises are actually incredibly smart animals. Her favorite thing to eat are tomatoes. It's her favorite treat in the world. And every morning, we get Lucky out of her enclosure and have her walk around with us while we're cleaning and doing diets. And Lucky has figured out where we like to cut up our diets. And she will walk down a hallway, turn left into the room where we're chopping our diets, walk right up to our feet, and just hit us ever so slightly, telling us that she's ready for her tomato for the day. So they're very intelligent. She'll walk. She knows exactly the path she needs to take. She'll come find us when we're doing the food for the morning for all the animals, and she will tell us that she is hungry and it is her time to get her food. But these guys, as you can see, tortoises look like they have these really powerful feet on them. They have a ton of tough scales across their body. They're very durable, and she is able to use that to protect herself from her predators. So tortoises can completely hide into her shell. That's why people thought she was a boulder the first time they saw her, because she can completely hide her head and her legs and her arms all into her body. Now, for her in Africa, she doesn't have a ton of predators then. Mostly the thing that's going to hunt them are lions, and mostly younger lions who don't know better, because lucky there's not a whole lot to her. It's mostly her shell. So these guys don't have a ton of predators, but typically younger lions are the ones interested in these tortoises. But she does get the name the leopard tortoise because of all those spots across her shell. So when you're spotted in Africa, you look just like cheetahs, like leopards. So if something just sees something spotted on the horizon, they usually don't want to mess with it because that's a lot of the cats in the savannas of Africa where you find this tortoise. So pretty clever camouflage this animal has to mimic cat species. But we'll go ahead and say goodbye to Miss Lucky here. Now Lucky, like I said, she loves tomatoes, but her favorite diet that we make her is that we make her a nice tortoise salad. Another big difference between turtles and tortoises are tortoises are completely vegetarian. They don't eat any protein. They won't eat fish or any other protein. They love to just eat their salad and their greens. Tortoises like to eat fish and protein, so that's another big difference between the two. But Lucky, we chop her up a nice salad every morning with plenty of tomatoes because she would be very upset if we didn't provide her tomatoes. And a ton of other little like squash and all these different things. So she eats a nice healthy salad every day. One of the healthiest eaters in our department, honestly. But they're really cool to be able to talk about tortoises and turtles. Tortoises, Lucky here, I've never seen her take a drink of water, and I've worked at the zoo for 3 years. So these guys don't ever hardly have to drink water because they get all the water they need from their food, which is crazy for us to imagine because we always need to make sure that we're hydrated. But for tortoises, easy. They don't ever have to take a drink of water. So very different from our mammal lifestyle. We'll go ahead and bring out our next animal. We're going to switch back to a bird here. This little guy, the number one question I get about this little guy is if he is a baby owl. This is going to blow your minds. He is a full-grown owl. This is Otis, and he looks like he's a permanent baby mini owl, but he is full-grown at 7 years old. That means that Otis will not get any bigger than this. So very, very tiny little owl. But what's really cool, guys, is that this owl could be living in these trees right here. He is a native species here in Ohio. They are called the eastern screech owl. So Otis, the eastern screech owl, like I said, found here in Ohio. You have a very good chance of having him live on all of these trees back here. This looks like a perfect screech owl environment. But as you can imagine, it would be so hard to see that bird in all these trees back here because he's so small. And also his nice brownish color that he has helps him blend into every tree in this area. So being able to camouflage like that's very important for Otis because he's able to stay hidden from things that might bother him, like larger birds of prey or other species. But Otis, this right here, I like to call him nature's cheapest pest control service. Because Otis likes to eat mice, voles, cockroaches, crickets, mosquitoes, a lot of things that we actively try to keep out of our houses or, community centers and more. So having screech owls is very nice because they love to eat all the things that we really don't like to have around us. So, which is crazy because little Otis here could eat a whole mouse. A mouse looks to be about the size of him, so it's very impressive that he's able to eat a whole mouse. In fact, Otis eats 2 mice every other day. So he is able to eat a lot of food in that tiny little body that he has. But it's really cool, guys, because even if you think you have screech owls, like I said, it's hard to see them. Screech owls, though, they're talkers. So if you think that you have screech owls, you can actually play screech owl calls, like off YouTube or your phone, and they'll respond to them. So they love to be talkers. They love to talk to other owls and make other calls. So if you play screech owl calls, if you think you have them, you can actually hear the screech owls call back to you. So it's a cool opportunity to see if you have these little guys living around you. But what's really cool as well is that, especially within these trees back here, you can actually build something called owl boxes, which are like bird houses. They just look a little bit different. But screech owls are incredibly lazy birds. They hate building their own nest. In fact, whenever you find screech owls, it's actually because they've kicked other birds out of their nest and they've just taken them over. So if you guys build little owl boxes, which you can find like guides on the internet and such, screech owls will then move into these boxes, and then you've got a pest control service that just moved into your backyard. So it's really cool because then you can have these screech owls living right in your backyard, and you can play noises to hear them talk back to you, and they're eating all those things we don't like. So it's a really cool thing because we could take advantage of the fact that they're incredibly lazy, provide them free real estate, and then they're able to live right next door to us. But really cool thing about him, he has a better hunting success rate than big cats. He is a better hunter than lions and tigers. And that's because he has a lot of cool things about him that makes him a really good hunter. The first thing people usually notice are how big his eyes are. His eyes are huge in his head. If we had eyes like Otis, we'd have eyes the size of softballs in our heads. That's how big his eyes are in comparison to the rest of his head. Now, because of that, there is a cost to it. It's cool to have big eyes, but there's a cost whenever you have big eyes. And one of the things is that if you guys look forward and you look at me, and I ask you to look left and look right without moving your head, you're going to move your eyes. Great question. Yep, actually, that's a great segue into it, too. So these guys, they have those big eyes, and we're able to move our eyes without moving our head. We can look left and look right without moving our head. Otis, his eyes are too big. He doesn't have room for muscles for his eyes. So if he wants to look around, he actually has to move his head. His whole head to look left and his whole head to look right. So you'll also notice that he's able to turn his head much more than we can. It's a common misconception they can turn their head in a full circle. They can go very close. They cannot go in a full circle, though. They can 360 is a full circle. They go 270 of 360. So that's kind of like if we took our head right now and flipped it all the way around to our opposite shoulder. So that's how far he can go. The reason that he can is because he has to in order to see things, because he can't move his eyes. So if you guys feel the back of your neck, you're going to feel all those bones in the back of your neck back there. You guys have 7 bones in the back of your neck. What's cool is mice also have 7 bones, but so do giraffes. Giraffes and bones are just much longer than ours and mice, as you can see. But we all, as mammals, we all have 7 bones. That tiny little owl right there, he has 14 bones in his neck. He has double the amount of bones that the giraffe has. Now, it's funny because it doesn't even look like he has a neck. It looks like it's just straight head to shoulders, like no neck there. But he, in fact, does have 14 bones, and having 14 bones gives him more flexibility. So that's why owls can turn their heads so much. So maybe if we had 14 bones, we could turn our heads like owls. But we're mammals, we only have 7, so unfortunately we can't do what an owl does. But in the same token, we can move our eyes without having to move our whole head. So it's cool. There's always these little variations between all our natural species. And it's cool to be able to talk about them because it's just little things that make every animal and every species and even every individual unique from one another. So just a simple number of bones in the neck is a huge difference on our mobility, especially in comparison to the owl. So they have this amazing eyesight for their hunting. Another cool thing they have too is their ears. So do you guys see those little tufts on the top of his head? Kind of looks like his little ears. That's actually not his ears. Those are just decorative feathers that he likes to stick up when he's curious on what's going on. We don't know why necessarily they have them. We think it's just to make them look more mammal-like and more intimidating. But rather, his ears, one is up here by his eye, and the other is all the way down here on the other side of his head. So one ear is higher than the other on their head. That's important because he has amazing hearing because of it. Sometimes if we're in the kitchen, we hear something fall, we have to kind of take a second and figure out where it came from. If it was in the cabinet, if it was up here, if it was below us, to the right of us, left of us. Sometimes if a noise happens unexpectedly, we take a second to figure out where exactly it came from. Otis, with one ear being higher than the other, he doesn't have to second guess it at all. He's able to pinpoint exactly the location of a sound due to those off-center ears. So it basically helps funnel in noises and help pinpoint exactly where a sound is coming from. And that's important because if you're hunting things like mice and voles, which are incredibly hard to find, having amazing eyesight and then being able to have amazing hearing as well enables you to find all those creatures running around in the grasses. So these guys have that amazing ability, but the last final really cool thing about them as a hunter is that owls are something called the birds of silent flight. So what that means is that as Otis flies, he makes no noise. If you guys think about hawks and eagles, they make that grand whoosh sound as they fly. Otis, if he were to fly over everyone's head, I had you guys close your eyes, you guys would have a hard time telling when he actually flew above you. And that's because his feathers are unique. His feathers are spread out like this. Having spread out feathers like this helps the air fly right through them. So they make no whoosh sound as they fly because they didn't cup any air with them. So actually, a hawk and eagle's feather is actually spread out like this. It's actually cupped. So in comparison, an owl's is all spread out. And being a bird of silent flight enables all those mice and cockroaches and crickets to never hear you. So you truly do sneak up on those animals and be able to catch your food. So it's kind of a classic story of these predators and prey trying to always kind of have the upper hand on one another. So it's kind of crazy that there's all these cool adaptations from our predators and our prey species to make sure they're able to be successful. But we'll go ahead and bring on our next animal whenever. And this next animal is going to be another reptile. This little guy, his name is Vegemite. We call him Veggie for short, and he is something called a shingleback skink. So they are a type of lizard, and skinks are just really awkward-looking lizards. You can see he's got a very large body and very small, short little legs. So he's got those really kind of awkward proportions to his body. Now, Vegemite you'll find in Australia and New Zealand. He lives in the desert in those regions. And he is actually kind of a unique animal for a reptile. He is unique because Vegemite here has one mate for life. He is a monogamous reptile. So that means that they only have one mate for their whole life. So they will find a partner and stay with that partner for their whole life, which is cool because we don't usually see that in reptiles. We usually see that in mammals, we usually see it in birds, but he's unique in that they are reptiles who find their partner and stay with them. So these guys have unique partnership. He actually lives with his partner at the zoo named Spike. So it's Vegemite and Spike. But these guys in Australia, they're usually very opportunistic. They'll eat plants, they'll eat small rodents, they'll eat small lizards, snakes, you name it. They're usually very adaptable to things that they like to eat. But at the zoo, we don't feed them a ton, like a lot of the stuff that, like the natural rodents, that kind of stuff these guys would usually eat. Instead, his favorite thing to eat are blueberries. You give Vegemite a blueberry and he's the happiest little skink in the world. So these guys love those sorts of things. But if you guys look closely as Calvin's walking around with Vegemite here, I want you guys to take a really close look at his tail. And once you've looked at his tail, check out his head. So you're going to notice that his tail and his head look very similar to one another. They're both kind of large triangle shaped. Now, being the same shape and size is important because for a lot of animals, predators hate hunting their prey head on. Predators always want to sneak up on their prey. For Vegemite, his tail mimics the shape of his head. So for a predator, if they sneak up behind Vegemite to try to catch him, they're going to see that tail and they're going to kind of question it for a second. Be like, is that its head? Is it looking at me? And that moment of hesitation that the predator has is enough time for this little guy to pick up his little legs and go. And he'll get out of that situation. So they're very clever in how they like to deceive or trick the predators that might be bothering them. Is that they just use their very special shaped tail to mimic what their head looks like. That tail is also important because, like I said, Vegemite is a desert animal. So Vegemite likes to live in a very hot environment, but also deserts live up to their name in that they're very desolate. There's not a whole lot that you find in the desert. So for an animal that lives in the desert, whenever you find a source of food, you have to be very good with it because you might not have another food source for a while that you find. So Vegemite, when he finds some food he likes to eat, he's going to eat a lot of it. He's going to gorge himself on that food wherever he finds it. Then, with that, he's actually going to store the fat of it in his tail. So his tail works just like a camel's humps. So they're able to eat a lot, pack on a lot of that, the fat from the food that he found, and then he can go months without eating. I've heard of upwards of 2 months these guys can go without ever needing to eat anything, just based off the reserves they have in their tail. So it's a really cool adaptation these guys are able to do to help them survive and be successful in the environment where you find them. So they have that unique tail, and just like other lizards, he can actually lose his tail. So if a predator is really bothering these guys, and he's under a lot of stress from that particular animal, he is able to lose that tail completely in order to then get away. So a very cool adaptation, but as you can imagine, it would be a high cost for this animal to lose his tail, because that's where he keeps a lot of his fat storage or his food. So if he were to lose his tail, it would be pretty detrimental for him. But if he needs to, it's always an option. So it's a very cool defense that these guys have. Another cool thing, too, is if you notice, as Calvin's walking around with Vegemite here, you'll notice that he's been sticking his tongue out a lot. Not Calvin, the lizard. The lizard will stick his tongue out a lot, and that's because he is actually smelling you guys. So he does have nostrils that he can smell you guys with, but he's actually going to use his tongue mostly. Tail would be very weird. He's going to mostly use his tongue to smell you guys. And what he's doing is it's just like a snake. So then when they stick out their tongue, they flick scents back into their mouth, and they have a special organ on the roof of their mouth called the Jacobson organ. What they're doing is they're flicking all the scent back into that organ in their mouth, and they're basically tasting smells. So it's a very specific organ that a lot of our animals have to help better identify things around them. So they're able to flick all those scents back into their mouth to basically taste everything around them and better identify what's going on around them. But you'll also notice that his tongue is actually a dark color, and having that darker color helps him make sure that he doesn't burn his tongue on the sunlight. So giraffes at the zoo also have a blue tongue. So he has a blue tongue too. And giraffes at the zoo have a blue tongue, and Vegemite has a blue tongue because he's sticking his tongue out for most of the day. So to make sure his tongue doesn't get burned from the sunlight, he is a blue tongue to help work as a natural sunscreen. So it's a really cool adaptation these guys have too to help better protect that sensitive skin on their tongue. But we'll go ahead and say goodbye to Mr. Vegemite here. They're really cool. That's as big as he gets too, so they're not huge animals either. And Vegemite, like I said, lives with his partner Spike at the zoo. And Vegemite and both of them are actually going to be featured in our TV show here next spring, actually. So if you guys have ever seen our TV show called Secrets of the Zoo, these guys, you got a sneak peek because, oh good, I'm glad you like it. You guys got a sneak peek because these animals are going to be our next season. So these guys have a special little storyline, Spike does for sure. And it's fun to be able to talk about them because they're unique reptiles. But also you guys get a little sneak peek at our critters. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show, though. We appreciate it. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and bring out our next animal for you guys here in a second. But yeah, we love being able to travel and talk about this TV show, too, because you get to see the animals then in person and also see them on the TV show then, too. So it's always really fun to be able to talk about that and see everybody really enjoying the show afterwards. All right, guys, I'm going to tell you a secret. This is one of my favorite animals in the world, and people think I'm crazy for it. But this is Chanel the skunk. So we also have a skunk named Febreze. So we like our funny names when we have it. But people are a little worried with skunks because they spray. But I'm going to promise everybody here you're safe from a skunk spray. She is not going to spray you guys. Chanel the skunk, she cannot spray, so she will not spray anybody here. And instead, it gives you guys a unique opportunity because let me tell you, she has the cutest little face of almost any creature you've ever going to see. So it gives us a unique opportunity to see skunks up close. But to everybody know that this is a skunk right away. And Chanel the skunk actually wants that. Skunks do not want to blend into their environment. They want to be seen and to be noticed. And you guys were the perfect example of it because we all knew right away this was a skunk because of that stripe that she has. So it's really important that she has that because the secret of a skunk, they hate spraying. Skunks do not want to spray unless they absolutely have to. For a skunk to spray, they have to be really, really bothered. So for us, fortunately as humans, we know to give skunks their space because we know what they can do. So that usually works well for us. So knowing that, we are all safe from a spray of a skunk because we know to give them their space. So Chanel the skunk and skunks in general hate spraying. When they spray, It is incredibly powerful. She can shoot her spray about 10 feet. It is incredibly powerful. But because it's so powerful, it takes a lot of energy from the skunk to do it. And once she has sprayed, she has to wait about 2 weeks for her spray to come back, to build back up. So if you're a skunk, you have to be very picky about when you're actually going to use it. Now, when we're traveling with Chanel and our skunks, we always get a lot of stories about people's dogs who have gotten sprayed by skunks. It's a very common occurrence. In fact, one of our coworkers at the zoo, her dog gets sprayed by a skunk every single year. So being sprayed by a skunk every single year, pretty unfortunate. And unfortunately, the dogs never learn any better either. The reason is that there's a very unique story between the skunk and the dog. Skunks, like I said, hate spraying. So because they hate spraying, they have a lot of other methods they're going to do to warn you to stay away from them and that they're going to spray you. The first of them is her color. We know this is a skunk right away. We know to stay away from her. It's perfect for us. But it works for other animals too. They'll see that really noticeable contrast of colors and see her to stay away from her. A lot of our animals with chemical defense, like poison or venom, have bright coloration to them, like vipers or the lionfish. They're very noticeable. Bring your eye to them. They always have a warning with that. So for a dog, if you're running outside and you see this little striped puppy, you're not really going to think twice about it being striped. You're going to be really excited because it's a little puppy. So as a dog, if you guys think when you come home from work or school, you see a nice dog, they start jumping up and down and wagging their tail. They're very excited to see you. What's unfortunate is that Chanel's second warning is something that I called the skunk dance, which consists of Chanel jumping up and down and wagging her tail. So she starts to jump up and down, wag her tail. If you are a dog and you see that little puppy do exactly what you're doing, you're going to get really, really excited. And you're going to keep jumping up and down and wagging your tail. Chanel's final warning. She turns around, she sticks her tail straight up in the air toward that dog. Now, if you're a dog, best friend status is you smell each other's behind. So it's very unfortunate because the dog will then get sprayed by the skunk. Because for the skunk, it was getting all the wrong cues. It was getting that the dog was being aggressive. It wanted to stay away from her. So the skunk thought it had no more options. She thought that it was going to be hurt by this dog. But to the dog, he thought that he just made a new best friend. He got the jumping cues. He's got the playful cues. He got all the right ideas that this little animal wanted to play with him. So it's actually a classic story of miscommunication in the animal world. Because just as humans, we have a ton of languages in the world. And we have a lot of unique languages, spoken language. We have body movement languages. Animals have tons of languages as well. We just don't usually think about it because they're not usually spoken word. Animals communicate through smells. They communicate through mostly body language, even to us, but to other animals too. So this story of the dog and the skunk is a story of just miscommunication where one thing meant aggression, stay away from me, and the other one meant play with me, we're friends. So it's a very unfortunate story because dogs will never learn their lesson because it's ingrained in the dog that jumping up and down, wagging your tail is a good thing. So it's very unfortunate for the skunk and the dog because elsewise they could be pretty good friends because if they just knew both parties weren't going to hurt each other, then it'd be a little bit of a different situation for Chanel the skunk here. But skunks are actually really cool to have around, guys. They get a really bad reputation because they stink. But she is the natural predators of hornets, wasps, bees, ticks, and mosquitoes, and also venomous snakes. So these guys, what's really cool is that this little skunk right here, she is immune to every bee sting, every wasp sting, even venomous snake bites. Skunks are powerful, which is really impressive. So for us to be able to be hurt by the sting of a bee, we have to react to the sting of the bee. And as humans, we'll react to it. Chanel the skunk, she won't react to it at all. So she is able to eat hornets, wasps, poisonous snakes, venomous snakes without any cost associated with it because her body is able to fight off that response to them. So they're tough. They're really tough little animals. And she likes to eat a lot of those things. So if you guys have like a hornet's nest or a wasp nest, if you see a skunk in the area, you're in good hands because that's usually their favorite buffet. Is they'll go and eat all those hornets and those wasps and those nests. But she is really cool to have around, like I said, ticks as well. So she eats a lot of things. Kind of like Otis shot we had. I also like to call skunks nature's cheapest pest control service. Because even though a lot of people can have issues with skunks, skunks are also lazy. And if people have skunks, it's usually because it's beneath their decks or their patios. And sometimes we don't want skunks living right there. And I don't blame anything, too. I wouldn't want my skunk living beneath my patio. So there's actually some cool services. There's something called Scram, which is through the Ohio Wildlife Center. And it's a service that will come and relocate that skunk and move them to a place where they guarantee that skunk isn't going to move back into where you're from. So it's a really nice, humane way to move skunks, essentially. So you don't have to trap them or anything. Instead, these people come out, get the skunk, figure out a nice alternative home for it instead of your deck or your porch, and they'll move them to that area and ensure that skunk will be successful there. So it's a nice service you guys can use if you have an unfortunate skunk friend. But they're really cool to have around still because they eat a lot of hornets, wasps, a lot of things other animals don't eat in nature anyway. So they're really cool to have around. And also, didn't she just have the cutest little face when you guys walked up and got to see her? I just think that she's a darling. They're also they're also related to ferrets and creatures like that. So she's got a very ferret-like face. All right, we want to do Miss Sunny next. All right, perfect. This next animal's going to be up here with us. This next animal,
I'll tell you guys, when I started working with this department 3 years ago, the biggest animal is always the penguin. Anymore, this next animal is a crowd favorite. She's an animal that's going to hang upside down this perch here. Sounds good. All right, guys, this is Sunny the Sloth here. Like I said, this animal has completely
blown up in pop culture recently. People love sloths, and I love sloths too. They're amazing. Because to Sunny, this is the perfect day for Sunny the Sloth here. She just hangs upside down and doesn't move a whole lot. It's ideal. But as a sloth, you want to be like that because you don't have a ton of energy. Why waste any of your energy climbing around if you could just hang upside down in the tree? Now, Sunny's an unconventional sloth because she likes to explore. But usually sloths won't move a whole lot, and they'll just hang upside down and basically just take it all in. Now, Sunny the Sloth is found in Central and South America. She is an animal found in the treetops, and she's really unique because a lot of people ask, because she's hanging upside down, does she get dizzy? Because we think
about if we're on the jungle gym or we're hanging upside down.
All the blood rushes to our head. We might get a headache. Sunny, if we took her and flipped her the other way, she would actually get dizzy. So if we flipped her upside right, that would be like us flipping ourselves upside down. So she would get very dizzy if we turned her around the other way. And what's even cooler, guys, is that even though her eyes are in fact upside down, she sees upside right. She is able to see just like we can, even though her eyes are inverted from what ours are. So these guys are crazy well adapted to making sure they'll always stay upside down. Now, like I said, this is how she spends most of her time up in the treetops. She wants to just hang out up in the trees and not move around a whole lot. Because as a sloth, when she is dealing with her predators, she is usually hunted by things like jaguars, which is a huge species of cat found in Central and South America, and also large eagles. So she's hunted by these animals. So if she's being hunted by these particular animals, she doesn't have a ton of defense. She can't, those claws that she has, she can't really swipe at predators that bother her. She also can't really bite at predators that bother her too. She doesn't move that fast. So if you're a sloth, your best way to stay protected is to stay hidden. So she likes to hang beneath the branches and make herself hidden within that environment. But if she was in South America, she would be an entirely different color. She would actually be green if she was in South America right now. She would be green because where she's from in South America, it's a very humid environment. And what'd you say? Exactly, very nice. So he said that Sunny is green because they have algae across their body. And that's exactly true. I relate Sunny to to rocks that you see beside the edge of a lake. Rocks on the side of the lake start to grow algae and moss on them because they're motionless in a very humid or wet environment. Sunny the Sloth is no different than rocks on the side of a lake. She is completely motionless in a very wet and humid environment. So as a sloth, she starts to grow moss and algae across her body, which is crazy. That's how much she does not move, is that she starts to grow moss across her body. And that's important for a sloth for a lot of different reasons. Number one, you're green. So you're green just like everything else all around you. Green like the leaves, so you're better hidden. Number two, if she is ever too lazy to reach out to a leaf next to her and eat it, she will reach onto her back, pluck off some of that moss, and eat it. I like to say it's fast food sloth style. It's like if you guys could grow French fries on your back, and whenever you wanted one, you just eat one off your back. That's how ideal it is for a sloth. And so that's really nice because she basically harvests and farms her own food across her body, which is crazy. And that moss and that algae is really important too, because it's actually a form of its own ecosystem. Because there is a species of moth that only lives on sloths within the moss on them. It's called the sloth moth, which is perfect, and I love that name. The sloth moth you only find on sloths in that moss that grows on their body. So they are incredible. They have formed their own habitat and their own ecosystem just by being lazy. It's the dream. It's like these guys are incredible. So green is great. You want to be hidden. But the sloths face a kind of a predicament because when you're hidden, you don't want to move around a whole lot. You don't want to do a lot. So by nature, these guys have to go down from the top of the rainforest one time a week. It is to do one very particular task. Good poop. That's exactly right. Sloths come down one time in a week from the top of the rainforest to the bottom of the rainforest to go to the bathroom. I like to say Sunny is the best road trip companion you could ever ask for. They only go to the bathroom one time a week. If you guys only had to go to the bathroom one time a week, you would have to go a lot. So the sloth is no exception here. In the morning when you guys are maybe eating cereal and you get a gallon of milk out of the fridge, that's how much urine Sunny can hold in her body at one period of time, is a whole gallon worth. And it is very, very, very impressive. So she goes to the bathroom a ton when she has to go because only one time a week, that's a lot. So the reason they go one time a week is because if you had to go to the bathroom a lot at the top of the rainforest, you'd have to move around a lot. You have to go to the bottom a lot, go back to the top. All that movement can draw attention to you. So instead, they take the risk one time a week. They crawl down all the way from the top of the rainforest to the bottom and do their business. And then once they've gone to the bathroom, they'll then climb to the top of the tree and then move away. Because take it from personal experience, it is incredibly smelly. These guys will make it's a huge, gross smell that these guys will make. And because of that, for jaguars and everything, that's like a huge red flag. There's a sloth here. So then they just leave the area and call it a day. I always like to joke with people, it's a fantastic job working at the Columbus Zoo, but there's always that one day of the week you kind of wish you didn't have to work. And it's the day the sloth goes to the bathroom because it is a lot and it is stinky. But these guys are fantastic animals. They're one of the weirdest creatures, I think. And what's even cooler about these guys is that their closest living relative is the anteater. So if you guys have seen the anteater, it looks nothing like the sloth. It's got a huge snout. It lives on the bottom of the rainforest. The claws are kind of similar, but totally different purposes. But they're related to the anteater and the armadillo. Those are its two closest living relatives, which is bizarre to me. But for the reason that they are is you have to look at their teeth. So Sunny technically has teeth in her mouth, but they're not true teeth. It's because they have no root to them. So all our teeth in our mouth are individual bones. Sloths, rather, are just extensions of her jawbone up. So they're not true teeth in her mouth. So that's why she's related to anteaters and armadillos, because they are the toothless mammal family. So they don't have any true teeth in their mouth. That's how scientists decided to group them all into the same category. I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but it works for the mammals, for like our toothless mammals like the sloth and the armadillo. But yeah, no, they're fantastic animals. You can see she's well adapted to living her life upside down in the rainforest. And what's cool, she's even shaped like a little basket. So before she goes back, if you look, she's got some really cool fur on her. A lot of people ask if she's soft. She's not. She's wiry. She kind of feels like a wiry brush. So these guys are very wiry, and you can see those darker regions on her fur. Whenever water hits her in the rainforest, if you're shaped like a basket, you could collect a lot of water on your belly, and you could get really heavy. So to make up for it, she actually has her own natural gutter system. So when water hits her belly, it's going to streamline right off of it. So she will not collect any water on her belly because it runs right off of her due to the texture of her fur, but also she has these little streams across her fur. So really well adapted animal, really, really interesting, really cool. Now, something about Sunny too is that she actually hates wind. So sloths in the rainforest, they don't like wind because they don't want to fall out of a tree. So we're just waiting for a nice moment where the wind isn't as strong, and we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to Miss Sunny here. But naturally, these guys don't care for wind, which is interesting. So kind of funny, but all right, guys. Sunny the sloth here was the last animal that we had for you guys today. I want to thank you guys so much for having the Columbus Zoo out here today. We were so happy to be able to share some of our amazing animal mastery with you guys. And overall, thank you guys so much. We hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at the Columbus Zoo here pretty soon. But thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.